Today for predictions versus reality, we wrap up the AFC North talking about one of the league's best teams and one that I loved watching through the highs and through the lows, the Baltimore Ravens, finishing top of the AFC North once again. We're going to talk about where I had them in August, what they need to do to get better, what happened with their season, and then what they can do to get better. But before we begin officially, all right, and welcome in, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take. Welcome in to Predictions versus Reality. The offseason series continues here with the Baltimore Ravens. This team, like I mentioned in the intro, was really fun to watch. I loved it. Love this team through the highs, through the lows. Definitely one of my more favorite teams to watch this 2024 NFL season. So, before we begin, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new around here on the channel and you like this type of content or you like listening to the Shumake Take podcast in general. I would really appreciate it if you guys would hit those two buttons. It helps. So take only a couple seconds, and it helps the channel out tremendously in helping me grow my football passion and spread it to more and more people on the internet. So, all that being said, let's begin talking about the Ravens. Where did I have this team in August? Well, I had this team going 13-4, and honestly, I think it was a pretty good prediction because the roster was still a top unit in football. I thought they had a really good free agency. They filled the holes where they really needed to fill holes on their team, and I thought that they added a really, really good draft, and looking back, it looks even better in my opinion. You add on top of that with Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh and the great cute quarterback and coach that they are, this team had a recipe for success from the get-go, which is why I had them going 13-4. Either way, what happened with their season? Well, they actually finished 12-5, which was one win less than where I had them projected. But overall, the team still looked the same as I envisioned that it probably would. Their offense ranked first overall in the NFL, in my opinion. I thought the Lions were better, but the Ravens were the best one in the AFC objectively. I don't think there was any other team that had an argument to be better than Baltimore. And their defense also finished 10th, a unit that really got better as the year went on. The three best wins to me were against Buffalo, 35-10, one of their biggest blowouts of the year against another playoff team. The win against Tampa at Monday Night Football in Tampa, 41-31, was another dominant win. And then probably their most dominant win was beating Houston at Houston 31-2, only allowing a safety, which was insane. The offense did not score any points whatsoever. It was the most dominant win, in my opinion, that the Ravens had all year, showing how good of a football team this bunch really, really was. Outside of the first couple weeks, they started 0-2. They lost in Kansas City on Thursday Night Football to start the year, week 1. And it was, remember, it was the Isaiah Likely catch where his toe was out. So it was a heartbreaking loss there. And then week 2, they lost against the Raiders. And after that, some people were like, okay, what's going on with Baltimore? There's a lot of concern there. And I remember talking about how this is not the start that I expected the Ravens to have. But they were able to bounce back. They only lost 3 more games the rest of the way. They went 13-3, right? Or they went 12-3 the rest of the way. And the thing was, the Ravens, they were great from start to finish, and that didn't accentuate more than all their losses were 1-score games. They didn't lose by 2 scores, not one time, and they didn't have many 1-score wins either. A lot of their wins were by 2 scores or more, which showed really how good of a team this was. Their offense, Lamar Jackson, I've talked about him enough throughout the year. He should have been my MVP in my opinion, but Saquon Barkley ended up deserving it more, and then Josh Allen winning it, I can respect it. So Lamar Jackson simply had the best year of his career. I've talked about that enough. And then Derrick Henry almost had a career year, second best year of his career in my opinion, objectively speaking. So those guys were great. The rest of the free agency group was really good. Kyle Van Noy, another highlight of the free agency class, had 10 sacks. So that was awesome. I think he had 12.5, if I remember. He's just turning back the clock, and he has no time limit on his frame and motor. It's great. Absolutely great there. And then their draft class was really good. Nate Wiggins got better as the year went on and looks very promising. And then second round pick Roger Rosengarten, who filled in for Morgan Moses at right tackle, who had left in free agency, looks to be a stud. He was fantastic in his first year and really surprised a lot of people. And then you look at the video that came out with him talking to Myles Garrett saying he's a nobody, and Myles giving him the respect, really put him on the map as a guy who has really, really high potential to be one of the better right tackles in the NFL. So all that being said, it was a great year for Baltimore regardless. I don't think 12-5 and 13-4. I don't think this team was that much different compared to where I had them projected to where they actually finished. So what so excuse me. What went right? What really happened? What were the specific things that happened that contributed to Baltimore having the year that they had? Well, I talked about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson going off, but the defense I want to elaborate a little bit more because I did talk about how they did get better. They got much better. At the beginning of the year, especially this pass defense was terrible. Overall, from year by year's end, they finished 31st, but the second half of the year, that was simply not the case. They definitely became a little bit more above average in that department, and this defense overall finished with a unit that looked a lot like their 2023 unit. That was not the best, but it still looked really, really good and got a lot better. Another thing that they really improved at was penalties. Throughout the first 2/3 of the season, they were the most penalized team in the NFL, right next to the Titans, and that last third of the year, they cleaned it up and were one of the best in the NFL at not committing penalties. It was an overnight switch, and it really, really helped this team in the final stretch of the year when they had a lot of tough games. And even though they lost a couple, they weren't committing penalties either. So they were really playing clean, really playing solid. And when you add that with the secondary improving and the defense overall just improving as the year went on, now you got a team that really looks dangerous and could compete for a Super Bowl, which I genuinely believed. And you see stuff like that, and then you look at Lamar Jackson and him having the best year of his career. This is an example of why organizational consistency is so important with your head coach, with the people in your front office, with your players, because when you have that consistency, it solves a lot of problems on your team. Because when you have a stable foundation, you can always rebuild it. You can always build off of it, if that makes sense. Let's say you have a house and you have a really stable foundation, and then something happens and you lose your house. But if you still have your foundation, you can rebuild it and fix it. It's fixable. You can work around having something damaged or depleted. And throughout the years, the Baltimore Ravens, they've had holes on their roster and they've had issues, but they've continued to win and be good. And that has a lot to do with the foundation that they have set in Baltimore. And you look at the fruits of that labor with how well this team got, how good this team was, and how better their defense, got as the year went along. All that being said, before we move into how this team can get better, we do have to address the elephant in the room with Baltimore, and it's their continued playoff heartbreaks every single year. It was a very freakish end in the Buffalo game. Mark Andrews dropped the 2-point conversion, had it in his hands, but the narrative that Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs are swirling once again, and as another heartbreaking end to their year. I'm not saying this team is going to fall off. They're not going to happen or even take a big step back, but this is getting really frustrating. It's really getting frustrating. I'm not complaining about the fact that they lose. It's hard to win in the playoffs, and outside of the dynasty team that comes around every year or every decade, like the Patriots, like the Chiefs, like the Cowboys, like the 49ers, one team's going to win a lot more than every other team. That's just an objective fact. And the problem is a lot of these teams that are really good, like the Ravens, are going to lose in the playoffs more often than not because there's one team that's just going to win more than any other team. And some people try to compare that, and it's not fair because the dynasty is simply the dynasty. Those are the exceptions, not the rule, right? This reminds me a lot of Peyton Manning. And people dogged Peyton Manning for years about losing in the playoffs, but he's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever live. It's just he was not part of the dynasty. The dynasty team will always be the exception and not the rule. So all that being said, it's not the fact that they're losing in the playoffs that I'm complaining about. It's that how they lose in the playoffs. Because every year they find a way to be in a winnable situation, but they do a thing or two in the game that's completely uncharacteristic. They shoot themselves in the foot, and it costs them to lose the game, and they find a new way to lose. And this game, and for football, is a lot more mental than people want to really talk about. And that's been the big issue with this team, is that they just find a way to make these little mental errors that they don't make in the regular season, and it ends up costing them a win. Like the drop from Mark Andrews. In that situation, 9 times out of 10, Mark Andrews catches that pass and the game goes into overtime. But this was the 1 time out of 10 where they make a mistake, and as I hit my mic, they make a mistake and it cost them a win. And the thing is, they got to figure out how to not lose in these moments. They're not at a point where they know how to win. They need to learn how to not lose and shoot themselves in the foot again. And no matter how good you are in the regular season, If you can't figure that out, worse things will hit you sooner rather than later. And again, I'm not saying that the Ravens are going to take a step back or they're going to be bad. No, they're still going to be a playoff team and one of the best teams in the NFL next year. I can say that with confidence. But they just got to figure this out, because if this continues, they're gonna find that, yeah, that's the big step back could hit them sooner rather than later. So that being said, what can the Baltimore Ravens do to get better and ensure this doesn't happen again? Well, let's start with the big three needs that they need to have to help flesh out this team. Excuse me. Number one is wide receiver. This has been the big issue in Baltimore for years now. You have Zay Flowers, which is great. You have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Great. But Rashad Bateman, he's decent, but not great. Nelson Aguilar, he's a depth player. He's not a bona fide starting receiver. They need to get another guy to really elevate this passing game more than it already has. I know they rely a lot on Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson for the run game. That's their identity. But they could really use another wide receiver to get juice out of this passing game. I don't know what they do. I think they need to draft one, but it's more likely to me they sign a guy in free agency, right, and get someone that's been more of a proven commodity. But either way, I expect them to address this really quickly in free agency and in the draft. Kind of go both here. Probably not. But that's in my opinion, that's what they need to do. But we'll just have to see what they do. But there's no doubting that this is the biggest need on their team. The second one's defensive back. You have Marlon Humphrey. You have Nate Wiggins. The thing is, I think a couple guys are going to be free agents on this group. But also, it wouldn't hurt for them to draft another highly talented corner or safety to help them to keep on developing this secondary and help them improve a little bit. Because it was still the worst part of their team, in my opinion, entirely. So adding on there would really help improve that unit. I see no qualms in adding someone there. You can also never have too many good corners. So I think that's a big need that they need to address. The third need, maybe above DB, is linebacker. Roquan Smith is great. He's one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in the NFL. But they really need a guy to go next to him to play well. Patrick Queen was that guy, and he was fine, just not great. I think if you draft Jahad Campbell out of Alabama, which could be their first round pick, they're picking at the end of the draft. So this could be the move. And honestly, I would be all for it. Jahad Campbell's really talented. And if you add another patroller in the middle of the field right there, wow, like that would be a really good unit, because the defensive line is good. And I think you can supplement corner and DB in free agency, because all you really need is to add maybe like a solid veteran there to help just have experience and have more talent and proven commodities in that group. But linebacker, this is one of those needs where, like, if you can get Jahad Campbell and he hits with Roquan Smith next to it, oh man, that's a duo that could be one of the best in the NFL on paper, theoretically. It could really, really help this defense overall. And also, ultimately, they just need it there for depth purposes, because there's not really many people outside of Roquan Smith. So you get a guy that's really talented. You add, I guess you kind of do add depth at that position. So it would help. And to me, those are the three biggest needs they need to get better. But they also have some issues, like the left side of the offensive line. Patrick McCarry and Ronnie Stanley are set to be free agents, but I think they work to bring at least one of those guys back. And then edge is also in need, because Kyle Van Noy, he's great, but he's a veteran. And Odafe Owe, I don't know if he's a number one edge rusher. So maybe you draft one in round 2 or round 3 and, kind of develop him, and maybe he turns into something, which would be nice. But they need some true, like, top-end talent there to really help with this interior. That's also really good for them as well. So this team will have their work cut out for them this offseason, no doubt about it. But I believe they will do it. This is a model organization, and one of the few I truly believe will make the right decisions to get better. So I have my full confidence that they will do that. Along with that, they have the players and the coaches to keep winning, and the foundation to keep adding young players and develop them properly. So everything that they do in Baltimore, they do right. They do all the little things right. So I have my full confidence that they will continue to improve. And also, I'm really excited for the Ravens in 2025, because you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs, you look at where they are at, which we'll talk about in predictions versus reality later on. If you guys are watching this and the video is already up, I would recommend go watching it right after this one, because I'm probably going to compare the two a little bit when I talk about the Chiefs. That being said, this could be the year for Lamar Jackson, 2025. And it's as real as it's ever going to be so far, because if there's any year for the Chiefs to take a step back, it's this year. And if there's any team to really take the next step and and take over the Chiefs, maybe not take down the Chiefs, but win their Super Bowl and get theirs, it would be Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. You got to get past Buffalo. Cincinnati's a team that's looking to rebound. There's a couple other teams in that mix as well. But Baltimore, this could be the year. 2025 could be the year of the Baltimore Ravens. And I believe that they will make the moves to get themselves into that position. And we could really much see them in January or in February of 2026. But that's going to be a conversation for another later date. That being said, that will do it for To Me Today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe button. Helps the video a lot, helps the channel a lot, and helping me grow and spread my football passion to more and more people on this platform. Also, make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I want to hear where you think the Ravens should go in the first round. Where do you want them to go in free agency? Where do you think they will be next year? Do you think they will actually win the Super Bowl or make the Super Bowl this year? Because with what they're going to do to get better and the Chiefs taking a potential step back, I want to hear all of your thoughts. Also, lastly, make sure to share the video, whether it's by word of mouth or social media, getting everybody locked on to the Shumake Tank podcast. I have great content coming out for you guys every single week, so you don't want to miss all the great stuff I make for you guys. But that will do it for me today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.